Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Today's episode, as always on Friday, is a weekly review, this week being the 26th of May 2017, where I'll just be covering the weekly news, which of course at this point in the season there isn't a huge amount about. I am not one for speculation from OTAs, primarily be discussing injuries, and I'll then be going through my top 10 interior linemen in the NFL, simply because I feel like a list of like top 10 centres, for example, would be redundant because you're then covering almost a third of the league's centres and you're not going to get quality all the way through that list. So that's coming up, but first let's get down to the brass tacks and the weekly news. So one of the things I've not mentioned on the show yet, David Irving, the Cowboys defensive end, who was pretty productive last season, maybe at his young age their most promising pass rusher, is apparently going to potentially be suspended for the first 4 games of next season. If this is the case, this is really bad news for the Cowboys, who are pretty thin across the board defensively, and particularly on the defensive front. And to lose a young promising player, I mean, first off, you've got the problem that he's missing 4 games, also that he's one strike away from missing a much larger amount of time, whether that ends up being half a season or an entire season. So I think this is potentially very, very bad news for them. There are reports that he may have evidence that will be able to get him free of this charge. If so, this is a non-story, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And I certainly feel this could be significant for the Cowboys' defence's chances early on in the season, due to their lack of depth and quality pretty much across the board. Another significant, I think this is pretty significant, the Colts, I presume he's going to be the strong safety with Malik Hooker being drafted. Clayton Gafers has just had surgery for an injury, may not be ready early on in the season. This is a fairly similar in some ways to the aforementioned Cowboys player, in that, again, this team does not have a lot of talent. This is probably one of their better defensive players. Maybe him, Vontae Davis, and we can assume Hooker is going to be quality for them. To be honest, not a huge amount else in terms of proven talent. This is the kind of injury as well, I believe it's a neck injury that could potentially linger on, have also long-term repercussions, of course. Priority, of course, for the player should be his long-term health. Absolutely, I will never dispute that. Wouldn't want him to rush back. My worry would be that he may well do that, and it could end up being significant. But as I say, much like with the Cowboys, this is a team that is incredibly thin defensively. They need all the help they can get, and if he does end up missing significant time, I think that weakens what's already a pretty soft defensive group, especially when really you think with Hooker, him and Vontae Davis, that secondary should be the strength for them. If you take away one of those pieces, it's got disaster written all over it defensively in Indianapolis. So similarly, we've got the Bengals. Tyler Eifert, his last surgery, still recovering from. He may not be ready throughout training camp pre-season. This may carry on into the season. I think this is even more concerning considering the player's injury history. He's missed time throughout his career in Cincinnati. Of course, when he's healthy, he's a dynamic and dominant receiving threat from the tight end position. However, much like some of the other teams, if him and AJ Green are the only two sort of proven commodities in that receiving core, John Ross, who knows what he may offer in this rookie season. I think this has to be concerning for Bengals fans. And again, this is a player who's had so many injuries. It's probably concerning for the long term as well. It's been kind of like Gronk has just struggled to stay on the field enough for this team. We've also got Mike Pouncey of the Dolphins. He may not be ready to start the season. There's a possibility he might have to miss a couple of games. I think this is significant. The Dolphins look massively better on the offensive line when he is available. He, of course, much like some of the guys we've discussed previously, has missed some time in the past. We saw this season, when he was in the lineup, this team looked far more dynamic. one of the better centres in the NFL when he's healthy. I think if he misses any time, I think it could be a major issue for this Dolphins team. I mean, if you're trying to make up ground on the Patriots and maybe not win well, obviously they'll try to win the division, but at least try and push for the division. You need your key players to be healthy. It may not end up being a big deal, however, it would certainly concern me and is a story to keep an eye on if you're a Dolphins fan, I would feel. I've also got Dilma Buchanan for the Cardinals. He underwent ankle surgery. This is another player who may miss some time in the regular season. I think the Cardinals are incredibly thin defensively. The linebacker spot, whilst they did draft Hassan Reddick, he's basically just stepping in for Kevin Minter. Not a lot of depth there, not a lot of quality there. Buchanan feels, has a valuable role in that team, one that I don't think is easily replicated. So if he misses some time, I think this unit's going to be even worse, particularly in the run game, where I feel with the defensive front they've currently got, that could be an issue. So they need to get him to get back as soon as possible. Hope there's no lingering effects from that ankle injury. Other bit of news this week: the Rams Stadium is delayed and is likely not to be built until, I think, 2020. So it looks like the Super Bowl is likely going to be headed to Tampa in 2019. I mean, really, this just sums up these teams moving to LA. To me, moving the two teams, it's felt a bit farcical. The turnout at Rams games last year was not good. It's not that it was much better in St. Louis before, but moving the Chargers there, I think this just shines a light on what a strange move that was. So we'll see what happens there. Always good to see a Super Bowl in Tampa. You're going to get good weather for the game in all likelihood. So there is that. So there we have it. That's my weekly breakdown. If there's any stories I've missed, give me a shout. As always, I'll look to cover them as soon as I possibly can. As I say, this time of year, I don't really like doing speculation for OTAs. So I'm going to move on to my top 10 interior linemen currently in the NFL. So first up, coming in at number 10, long-time Green Bay Packers guard, now playing for the Bears. Missed some of last season, but still played very well. Josh Sitton. This guy's been incredibly good since he was drafted. A big part of the Packers' offensive success. Played very well. Him and Carl Long were a very good pair in Chicago last year. Unfortunately, injuries sort of derailed both their seasons at times, as well as many other issues with the Bears that led to that poor record. But this guy's just an exceptional player. A great run blocker, solid in pass protection, no real holes in his game. One of the only reasons he's down at this point is because of advanced age. I do tend to favour up-and-coming players towards the top of these lists. Coming in at number 9, we've got a player I mentioned earlier, Mike Pouncey. I think he's one of the better centres in the NFL. Just struggled to stay healthy, and yes, I do believe he is better than his brother who plays for the Steelers, playing the same position. As I said there, I think the injury would be a big deal. This guy's incredibly athletic, can do things that not a lot of the other centres can do in terms of his mobility. Incredibly efficient run blocker, does a great job setting the protections. As I say, his impact is most notable by the impact of his absence. I mean, when he was playing last year, they looked like an incredibly talented offensive line. Once he went missing, things did not run as smoothly in any regard. Once he got healthy, that run game got humming, spurred on that team's success. This is an incredibly talented player. The only issue is his ability to stay healthy at this point in his career. Moving up to number 8, one of my favourite linemen coming out of college. Covered him in this week's episode of Top 100. David DeCastro of the Steelers. I think last year, he'd been solid for the Steelers before, but last year he really blossomed into the player I thought he would be coming out of college. Developed into a fantastic run blocker as I expected he would. Much like Pouncey, his range sets him apart. Ramon Foster also had a very good season, probably a better season overall. But I've got DeCastro here because I think the upside is higher. I think he is going to continue to get better and he offers a rarer skill set. So for that reason, I've got him slightly ahead as a great run blocker. Solid in pass pro. I expect he'll continue to improve that aspect of his game. And, those two guards there are a big part of this Steelers unit being so successful. I mean, it helps to have the weapons they do, but that offensive line is very underrated. I'm moving up to number 7. Heading over to Washington for a player who was originally drafted, it seems, to play tackle, but he's found a home at guard, Brandon Scherff. The Redskins, another one of those offensive lines that seems to fly under the radar. This offense has been very good the last few years. Big part of that, great offensive line. Scherff, I thought, really improved last season. It's a pretty tough division with some of the defensive linemen he's got to deal with in New York and in Philly. I think he's an exceptional pass protector, solid run blocker. I expect that aspect of his game to improve as he gets older. I think there's a ton of upside there, and I think his future is incredibly bright there in Washington. I think he fits that scheme perfectly. Moving him into guard was a very wise move. Coming in at number 6, last year's big free agent signing in Oakland, Kelechi Osemele, otherwise known as KO. I mean, he was fantastic with Baltimore. It was not a surprise to see him go join what was an even more talented group than a lot of people would have thought going into last season, including myself, in Oakland. Became one of the top units in football last year. Him and Donald Penn were as good a tandem on the left-hand side of that offensive line as any other pairing in the league. Mauling run blocker, absolutely vicious player. There's a reason he got that nickname, and it's not just because it's the initials of his name. He really does live up to it. He mauls some guys, very hard to move, one of the larger guards in the league, and yeah, he's quicker than he looks, doesn't lose too much in pass pro, probably not as good in pass pro as some of the other guys, but when this guy gets his hands on players, he is not simply looking to move them out of the way, he is looking to punish them. Fantastic season, really helped that offense explode last season. Coming in at number 5, the big free agent guard signing of this off-season, Kevin Zeitler, formerly of the Bengals, now of the Browns. I think he's been an incredibly consistent producer since he was drafted a few years ago. There's really no holes in his game. He may not be as exceptional in any one area as some of the guys on this list, but I think he's as reliable and solid. I mean, he'd give, if you had to grade the guy, you're probably looking at solid B's and B pluses across the board in terms of his skill set. Just does not make too many mistakes, doesn't give away too many penalties. He's only young, 26, best football in theory, he's still ahead of him, and he's joining what on paper now looks like a fantastic line in Cleveland. I expect to see this guy, now that people are more aware of him, getting a lot more attention, of course, with that big contract. But I think he'll live up to that. I think this guy's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler now that there are some eyes on him. Coming in at number 3, draft pick that many, including myself, laughed at. Well, turns out we were all wrong. Travis Frederick of the Cowboys, the starting centre there. I mean, no, actually, that's wrong. Number 4. Misread my own list. Oh well, I'm not starting this video again. Number 4, Alex Mack of the Falcons, the second highest centre, since I've kind of spoilt my own list. Alex Mack was great for the Browns last year. Just really carried on his level of play that I've come to expect from him. This is an exceptional pass blocker, very effective in the run game, maybe not the most powerful of guys at the position, but he's a technician. But I think pass protection is where he really shines. Many would have thought last year that the Falcons' offensive line wasn't going to be particularly effective. One bonus they did have over a lot of teams, they did stay healthy the whole year, but with him making the line calls, getting everyone organised, they looked, I think, significantly better than the sum of their parts. He's clearly their most talented player in the trenches. I thought he had an exceptional season, and I see no reason why that wouldn't continue heading into next year with a year of experience in that, with that team around him. So, as spoiled previously, number 3, Travis Frederick, the top centre in the NFL in my opinion. Of course, he's got a lot of talent around him. Zac Martin, Tyron Smith, 3 of the more talented linemen in the league. As I said, many of us laughed when he was drafted at that point. I mean, sure, maybe they could have got him in the second, like everyone said, but frankly, they got great value selecting him where they did. He's become a fantastic player, for my money, absolutely the best centre in the league. I mean, look at what Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott were able to do. This guy making the line calls, he gets it right. I mean, look at some of the running lanes they opened up. As strong as I think any centre, possibly interior lineman in the league, gets great push in the run game. There's a wall in pass protection. I mean, he's just an exceptional player. No holes in his game. Still young, continuing to improve. A fantastic player. Should only continue to dominate the league. Coming in at number 2 on this list, Baltimore Ravens long-time guard, Marshall Yanda. What is there to say about this guy? I mean, they've had him playing tackle in the last couple of seasons because of injuries, playing both guard spots. I mean, this guy is just an absolute machine. A great player, incredibly reliable, as strong as they get, immovable in pass protection, great run blocker. I mean, this is, for my money, the reason he's number 2. He would be number 1. I think if I was playing a game tomorrow, this is the guy I want in one of those. Well, he's the first guard I would take. But yeah, he's of a more advanced age than the player I've got in the 1 spot. But for my money, he's been the best guard, well, interior lineman, even in the league for the last 2 or 3 seasons for the Ravens. Absolutely superb. Marshall Yanda, you're a great guy. You're just a great player to watch. And playing tackle and not missing a beat, that's very impressive. But coming in at number 1, most of you may have guessed it at this point, is Zac Martin, the guard for the Dallas Cowboys. Stepped in day 1, has been a dominant NFL player. His athleticism is simply superior to the vast majority of guards. Even some of the guys on this list who I say have a plus in that column in regards to their skill set. Obviously a great understanding of that scheme they run. They open up huge holes, has the ability to get to the outside, can block big guys one-on-one, allowing double teams for elsewhere. Just opens up absurd running lanes, gives up nothing in pass. It's just, this is a top end player, and I'd expect him to be considered probably the top guard in football for the next few years by most, even though, as I say, I do think Marshall Yanda is a little bit better right now. But once again, he had another great season, and him and Travis Frederick, for my money, 2 of the biggest reasons why that Cowboys offense should just continue to develop and have success. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 interior linemen in the NFL at this moment in time. What do you think of the list? Do your opinions differ wildly from mine? Let me know, whether it's in the comment section below. Find us on Cover Zero on Facebook. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. More than happy to discuss the list with people. Always fun to discuss these things. I say some guys that were close to making the list, guys like Ramon Foster, maybe Marquise Pouncey, Ali Marpet of the Buccaneers. I think he's been pretty effective. Gabe Jackson of the Raiders, I think he's a very good player. But, I'm happy with my list. I think it's a good one. But let me know if you got anyone different. As always, thank you very much for checking this episode out. Got a bunch of stuff coming up next week. I'm going to be doing my first power rankings. My far too early power rankings, I would suppose. But sort of post player acquisition period. Power rankings, that's coming Monday. Top 100 reaction on Tuesday. Another QB quandary. Another Cover Who episode next week. So check those out. As always, like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon if you've enjoyed the show. It'd be greatly appreciated. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you for your time, and go Bucks.